And we're back.
Have to show the logo.
Right? Branding, yo.
Welcome to your 8 a.m. Central Business live stream with your host, Alex Sorensen, business growth consultant, and
Meg Sorensen, a communication coach, global communication coach.
So, all right. We've been working through this week about doing a video sales funnel. Some of that has been particularly around how you structure this and the messaging that we've talked through earlier. But as you get into the weeds, a bunch of challenges arise in terms of just mental blocks or technical blocks, etc. So we're going to be talking about a lot of those challenges that you run into during the implementation. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who are funnel-specific experts that you can go to, or you can check out some of the people from earlier videos that were modeling our ads and funnels and landing pages off of to go for particulars about how to create your specific landing page. This is more about the behind the scenes, real life. How does the business unfold? What are the real obstacles you run into along the way that you don't get from someone telling you a success story after the fact?
Yep. And as far as communication tip for the day, excuse me, it's coming actually from 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, which I feel kind of awkward about, but our kids learn it at school, and so it's a thing that's in my mind a lot. But when it comes to communication, really the idea of seek first to understand, then to be understood, I have found to be very beneficial in my life, because honestly, most times when I've had major conflicts with people, it's because I was so entrenched in my own way of thinking, in my own kind of viewpoint, as myopic as it may have been, that I wasn't understanding where the other side was coming from. And so I wasn't able to even effectively communicate what I was trying to say, right? Yeah. And so by learning about other people, by trying to understand their cultural background, their history, their own personal experience, you'll better understand obviously what they're trying to tell you, but then you will know better how to frame what you're trying to say in a way that they will be able to receive. And I've experienced this so many times in talking with people from different countries, different languages. It's so easy to have miscommunications when you don't share the same cultural context. And so, try to understand the people you're talking with before you really start hammering in your points.
Yeah, that's such a great foundational principle. And as I go further in communication, I see the skill tree that branches off of that, because it's a good foundation. There's not seeking just to understand, but seeking to help the person you're talking to feel understood, right? That's the next level.
Oh, I love that one.
Right? That's from...
that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, Never Split the Difference, which is about negotiation, but the first several sections are about listening.
Yeah.
Because that's the best way to be able to have a productive negotiation, is to understand somebody and help them feel understood. And there was a great tip I just heard on a total nerd video. So this is one of the nerd, talking about Lord of the Rings and Arcane and other shows. And he did a video on Arcane, and someone left the comment I love Arcane. It's so complex and it has these rich characters. But when you compare that to Lord of the Rings, it's the plot happens often by coincidence. Characters are kind of flat or unidimensional. And if you the coincidence, for example, that, Gandalf getting off of the tower.
Sorry, I was thinking that they were saying Arcane was happening by coincidence.
No. It's
they were comparing it.
No, they're comparing it to Lord of the Rings, which is more theme driven or whatever. And so, Gandalf gets off of his tower by some, random coincidence.
Deus ex machina.
Aragorn stumbles into a large army of the dead, rather than cleverly figuring out problems himself per se. And so there's the ring finds its way around largely by coincidence. And so he was arguing that was just a worse show. And what I loved that the author of the channel who loves Lord of the Rings as well said that he took this question in and he was reminded of something a teacher once told him, which is before you answer a question, take a moment to appreciate the difficulty that the question poses, right? And so rather than just saying you're wrong or these are the reasons why you're wrong, he said, oh, okay, here's a question here. What are you really saying? And said and boiled it down to a great summary, which is, I can see the depth in Arcane. I can't see it in Lord of the Rings. And so he started thinking, what's the difference and where is the depth in Lord of the Rings that, draws people to it? And so like that, I think, is a bridger between the seeking to understand and helping someone feel understood.
Yeah.
Take a moment to appreciate the difficulty of the question posed.
Yep.
And so even if you already know the answer, giving a quick answer will make it feel trivial.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That's a really interesting thing, because I mean, it's not something that I do actively a lot. I mean, or I've never done, because I've never really thought about it in those terms. But it's something that I've learned instinctually to do. Or considering the question as though it's automatically right. Not like deciding that it's automatically right, but considering it as though it is, right? The reality in which we are living. And so that helps a lot to, kind of see where other people are coming from. But I like that idea of, if it was, consider it as a complex issue.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I would rephrase that a little differently, assuming that the person has a rational and valid reason for posing and or struggling with the question.
Yes.
Right? Not necessarily the question in itself might be right, but appreciating, the journey it takes to pose that question and, the journey it might take to begin to answer that it might have more than one answer, et cetera. So, there's a lot of depth there. And as a coach, it's also a great strategy if something really throws me back on my heels, and you might see me do this on the show. It's like, all right, instead of trying to fill that space with like whatever comes off the top of my head, like sitting back and being like, oh, wow, that's a really hard situation. And then, start helping define the edges of the problem rather than immediately jumping into the answer.
Yeah. And it's amazing to see the types of things that you'll see. So like this morning with our older son, he was organizing crayons that like stick into each other. And it looked like he was trying to do it in rainbow color order, except that there was like a little bit of a like thing. And his rationale was that, he couldn't put light blue next to purple because the shading is so different. And so he was doing light blue, pink, and then purple. And rather than being like, no, you're wrong, I took a step back and said, oh, you're doing that by shade rather than by hue. That's really interesting. How else, would you arrange these things? And it ended up being a completely different thing from rainbow order, but it was a way that I'd never looked at it. And he really did seem to feel very understood there. He was like, yeah, I like it this way. I was like, wow, thank you for teaching me that. And he was like very proud.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of disagreements and misunderstandings come from people having different criteria based on, different values.
Yes.
Right? Valuing hue or shade over hue.
Who knew? Anyway. I'm such, it was drilled into my brain, the rainbow color order of things. And so, but yeah, I like that. It's creative, and it opened my mind to new ways of doing things that are equally as valid.
Yeah. So next, by saturation. All right. So anyway, update, I guess, on the business. So Meg did have a side income project that basically took all yesterday and into the evening that she finished. I did put my funnel together, although I think I realized at the end last night there might be some kind of verification step I need to actually get everything running. I'm not 100% sure. And so what I ran into doing the funnel, I'd already made the video. I had to put it up. It actually wasn't as bad as I thought when I finally got in to edit it. I'd done a second take of the second half, and I'm like, actually, the first take that I did the whole thing in one take is not terrible. Do I expect it to be successful? No. But it's much better to get something out there so that I can start seeing what works. Like, it might be successful. Chances are there's stuff I have to fix earlier in the funnel in terms of experimenting with ads to get people to that page before that even matters. So just getting up and moving is a big step forward for me. And one of the things I noticed from that technical aspect is just that, and this is true of most things, new things, and this is new in a couple of senses. I've done, some marketing and advertising. I've been on videos before, but the new things are I have this new hypothesis about what people are looking for in coaching services and reaching a new audience that's already looking for partners, but perhaps the wrong kind of partners for their business. Which is a very different take than some of the other ways I've portrayed myself. So it's like a new hypothesis that I'm testing, and I haven't put my ads and my funnel together in just quite this way with a video sales letter before. It's more been like my traditional website and, just either an email, a sign up page, or a contact form or a scheduling page, etc., rather than this intermediary video step. So there's two new things, and it's easy to psych yourself out and I find myself, wanting to make it perfect, and then just realizing, like, having that very simple example, finding the simplest quality example that I could have, and just being like, nope, I have 5 bullet points, I'm going to try these ones, and I can A/B test, figure out ways to A/B test other bullet points into this funnel. We'll figure that out, but I can figure that out later. But just get something up there, because the first hurdle is just overcoming your perfection and being able to get data. And then once you get data, like once you have that momentum going, then it's then some of the crazy, like the self-talk about like, oh, this is terrible, this isn't going to work, settles down, and you can respond to that self by saying, I know it's not going to work. It's not supposed to work. It's supposed to be practice, and it's supposed to, help me get data to practice better.
Yes.
So,
right? Process,
right?
Perfection.
That's the whole journey, and I'm working through that myself. But I am excited, and it'll probably take some iteration, but I am excited to report on what results I do, and in the near future probably do not get. To give you realistic expectations. I was listening to a show the other day where someone was being interviewed about, and I've had someone to come on and interview them on their own channel, which was interesting. It's a good format, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, they had someone come on and interview them, and it's about like YouTube channels and the making of a successful YouTube channel. And you talk about someone who, hit hundreds of thousands of views or something on like their 4th video, or it's crazy. And how if you have the right niche, you can do that. And I love the interviewer pushed back, and he did this a couple of times, but that's not typical, is it?
No, it's not.
Right. And he's like, no, everything has to be perfect. And of course that's the example all of these people want to share, like the notable, memorable, exciting examples they want to share. But what we want to share is all of the great mediocre examples you actually have to trudge through on your way to those, showing you how it unfolds. So I will report on that. I will report on it honestly about the actual results I am or am not getting.
Yay, I love that.
So take it away. You did have a major assignment for today, which is tracking your time.
Oh my gosh, this was illuminating on so many levels. So just to kind of recap what we talked about yesterday is I'd had intentions of continuing my sales funnel and work on that, but this other thing, the editing of colleague's thesis, was I'd been working on it, but there was a certain block that I'd had with it, but I told her I would have it to her kind of like end of November-ish, and end of November came or was quickly approaching, and I found myself, instead of like buckling down and working on it, just avoiding everything. So not just that particular task, but also other important things that I should do. And as I tracked my time yesterday, it started out, as a great reminder of, oh, I'm tracking my time. I want to make sure that I'm showing that I'm using my time well. And so in that respect, it gave me a boost. And then at one point I don't even remember when it was, I was trying to address this hard thing, right? This thing that was blocking me on the revisions. And every time I tried to move on to something else, even in that, in the thesis, I kept coming back here and I could not get past it. And it hurt my brain so much. I was just like, gah. And my initial reaction was to go back to some of my old habits, right? So, I found a weird, it's not even a puzzle platform. I just found something to just like, okay, and, ended up getting lost in that for, it was only like 45 minutes, but still it was like a significant chunk of time. And even while I was doing it, I was like, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be working on that thing. But I just could not wrap my brain around moving on until I had faced this hard thing. And so finally, I had dinner, I finished my stuff. I had dinner and came back to it and said, okay, I'm ready. I am facing this now. And so it was hard at first to kind of push through those things. But because one, I'd been tracking my time, and two, I'd been aware, very, very mindful of my headspace throughout this whole process of, I'm being great. I can't handle this. Oh, I am actively avoiding this thing that I know. And I know that this is bad. And I'm judging myself because I feel like it's bad. And then, moving through it and then sitting down, I figured out that for whatever reason, and this is something that I can look back and see in my own history, that my brain had the tendency to fixate on certain things. And it is very difficult for me to move past that thing if I don't address it. And so this happened when I wrote my own thesis, right? So I did my graduate program. It took me like 3.5 years to do a 2-year program, which is fine because like my professors and everybody, they wanted me to stay extra long. So they were like, oh yeah, we'll find funding for your tuition. Don't worry about it.
And she extended a little bit in part because she could do teaching in Japan through this program during the summers, which was a sweet gig.
Yeah, well, and I had to defer a semester early on because of health issues, back issues, and spinal fusions and stuff. And then, just the combination of I was doing so much great work that I didn't really care about working on my thesis. And my professors were getting good work out of me for a really cheap price. So we were all benefiting from, this wonderful thing. And you still had time left on your graduate program because you started after I did. And so it all worked out in the end. But part of it is I had been avoiding certain aspects of writing my thesis. And so like semesters were passing where I would make almost zero progress. And then finally, when I had that deadline in front of me and I was going to be defending in 3 weeks, I was like, I should probably finish this. And I wrote at least 80 of the 100 or so pages of my thesis in those 3 weeks. And it was because I just couldn't get past that first part. But once I did, everything else just happened. It was so much easier. I got into that flow state where I recognized the difficulty for what it was. I addressed it as it came at me and then moved through it rather than agonizing or trying to avoid it. And so I experienced much the same thing yesterday, where it did take me a while to figure out how to address this issue. But I did figure it out. And then once I did, everything else started to come much more naturally. And I was able to finish that thing. And so I guess kind of, to sum all of this up, as I've looked back on it and feeling this finally, I'm done with that really hard part. But also being incredibly grateful for that time that we took yesterday, because again, this is not something I do often in like this particular relationship, where I admit like I'm really having struggles with this thing that I feel incredibly insecure about, which is my own personal time management. I usually just kind of like shove that under the rug and pretend it's not an issue. But yesterday, talking about it and getting your perspective, right? And having those things that I could look at as, okay, even if I'm not doing it perfectly, I am noticing it and I have more perspective on everything. And so I can learn from it, as opposed to just going through the motions and just being exhausted at the end and saying, oh, I'm just glad that's over, and never thinking about it again. I feel like I've actually learned something really useful that I'm interested to see how I can apply it in other areas where I feel blocked in my life.
Yay! Yeah, unless, the person you're talking to is, really stressed out, or it's a toxic relationship, most other people are less likely to be critical of you than you are to be of yourself.
Oh, and
right?
that's so hard for me to wrap my brain around.
Right. And I think that's one of the reasons why it can be relieving to talk about these things.
Or I feel like
right.
I don't deserve that kind of treatment because I don't give it to myself.
Yeah.
Right? And so like, yeah. It's hard. I'm learning.
And because of our conversation, actually, I also was a little bit more aware of like my headspace. And when I started to stress about the funnel, and I just been talking about like 3 levers for motivation, I'm like, well, I'm really tempted to like put this down as I run into a bunch of weird technical issues trying to update my website, or like navigate between Facebook has an old experience and a new experience, not only on the business page, but on the new ads experience. And some of these things don't sync up, some of their instructions don't work, etc. And so, and I'm like, I would rather just watch a YouTube video. I thought about that and I'm like, well, let me take a third option, right? I would also rather take a nice warm bath because it's cold and, listen to a song that taps into what I talked about yesterday, my motivation to be a better dad, which then translates into my motivation to like get back and sort things out at work when they're difficult. And so I deliberately took time to invest in building up my motivation so that I could handle that rather than just avoiding it or pushing through it, right? There's kind of a third option there. So being aware and talking about where your obstacles are, where your headspace is, can be very effective in terms of just bringing more... giving you more options, right? You're going to get stuck in a binary, do this or that. But when you're actually like observing your own headspace, then other options open up.
Yeah. Well, and I will also say like one thing that was different about my, kind of trying to shut down my brain yesterday was that I went and found a new game to play as opposed to this same one where I'm just like moving numbers around and hoping that I get, lucky enough for the new one to appear in a bad place or something like that to mess me up. But this one required actual like focus and concentration and skill. And it was hard, but in like the most rewarding way. And so I think I don't know if I don't want to say like it helped me. It was a good thing that I did that because it's probably not. But I also recognize the value of when you are really having a hard time with a thing, right? You think about it, you concentrate on it, and then you let it go for a bit and let kind of those background processes of your brain and your subconscious handle it while you do something else. And then when you come back to it, new solutions might appear. And I did find that actually to be the case, that as I was, doing this other stuff, and then, I came back, all of a sudden I was like, oh, I just need to do that. It's going to take a while and I'm going to have to figure out how to do that. But if I tried that thing, then it might work. And it did. And so, yeah, there is power in, sometimes putting down the hard thing.
There is, as a point of observation, I would say probably like if you're going to rank the tiers of effectiveness, ones that don't completely occupy your mind with something else or have like new information coming in are probably going to be the most powerful at letting your brain do its thing, which includes sleeping. Napping actually it can be fairly effective as long as it's not a super long nap that's going to like wreck your sleep schedule. Taking a walk, listening to music but not doing something else, especially if it's like a familiar song or if it's classical music, it doesn't have words, right? That will let your mind wander a little bit. Like those are ways of doing of releasing your brain a little bit more than say like watching something or playing a game, although I also do that. It's not like I spend all of my free time reading classical literature and going on walks.
Well, and I will also say, like, usually I'm watching a video and playing a game at the same time when I really want to shut things down. But I was only doing this game that was purely logic based. And there was no other background noise. There was no other, distraction in there that would stress out my mind or occupy it in some other way.
And that can itself can be a step forward. I know what that's like. I've done that myself. But going to the Huberman podcast where he talks a lot about the neuropsychology, he talks about like dopamine spikes, right? And so by basically doing a game and listening to music or watching a video at the same time, you're increasing your dopamine spike, but what happens is that it's kind of like a drug. You need more and more dopamine to like maintain the same level of distraction, so it becomes less and less effective. And not only that, like generally your body just starts wanting to have more dopamine. And what you have to do to normalize that is spend time without dopamine to let those levels drop so that you're not like basically addicted to the dopamine and constantly craving it.
And we've had this discussion before, and I was actively like recognizing that need because again, the video plus the game plus checking Facebook and my email and all of these other things that are sending me notifications constantly and just like I recognized the toll and that I felt like I needed to, right? Again, that compulsion. And so, remembering this discussion we'd had about dopamine, I said, okay, I'm going to turn down the dopamine and make this active choice to, do this. And it was very helpful. So
do one thing at a time.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's a lot.
That is a lot.
So
it was a good day. It was a crazy day. I've only slept like 3 hours.
All right, so. you should get some sleep today.
Yeah, I probably will.
All right. Well, my business tip, I will make this short and sweet and just follow up from yesterday. I've kind of talked about it generally, but I want to collect these items in a quick 3 bullet point tip, which is I talked about the levers of motivation, or change, external motivation, and that's inspiration, discipline, and ease. And I just wanted to give quick examples. And so an example of discipline, something that I do for discipline, because discipline is like a muscle, meaning engaging it regularly in moderate amounts can actually strengthen it, although you can tire it out. But my main discipline habit is I always get in a cold shower.
He's insane.
So, and depending on the day, like most days that will be cold the whole time, a day like yesterday, I might do cold shower, then hot bath, or if I'm sick, I might start cold but get it warm because you don't want to leave your body temperature low. Some people do this with making their bed, but one of the things, if I ever get into the headspace where I am saying I don't have discipline, I can always at least fall back on, like, I took a cold shower this morning.
He does. Every day. Like, he turns on the shower and gets in immediately. And I'm like...
It saves time. I also don't wash my hair. #NoPoo. So... All right. So, anyway, that's like a discipline habit, but having something you do, who is it? I don't know if it was Stephen R. Covey or the guy who kind of popularized the whole idea of disruption and whatnot, Clayton Christensen. Anyway, I think it was Clayton Christensen who was saying that like he loved ice cream, but he always made sure not to eat the last bite. That was his thing. So he did something, even just like a small token, to prove to himself he has, some discipline, like help ingrain that story. And so it can be helpful to just have a token habit like that, whether that's getting up and doing, 5 push-ups in the morning or whatever it is. It could be anything for you.
Mine since the beginning of October has been my scripture study in the mornings.
Yep.
Like if I can have the discipline to put that first and to prioritize that in my life, then I know I've got at least something in order. And it's been really nice actually having that habit. I've never been good at that, not even when I was in seminary. So
nice. So that's a great habit. What you do first in the morning is one of the hardest routines to set, which is, I guess, one of the reasons why I also get the making the bed, although I know you feel like that's rubbish.
I live in my bed. Why would I ever make it? That's
all right. So moving on with like motivation, I kind of alluded to it, but my favorite one motivation hack is just having a song that's inspiring, and usually I will wear it out. One of the things I love doing with my inspirational song is listening to that single song on repeat, sometimes for hours. Not because I love listening intently to the lyrics, but actually because of the opposite is like listening to the same song over and over again for me mimics flow. One of the qualities of flow is that you have, you're like time dilates. It feels kind of timeless. And so listening to a song on repeat it can mimic that for me. It just can't be one of my all-time favorite songs that I know,
like you'll get sick of it.
I'll get absolutely sick of, but like my new favorite or whatever, it's a great one that I'll listen to a ton and then I'll switch to something else. So that's one of my favorite ways to hack motivation. And currently it's a country song. I don't listen to country songs that much, but
it's not a really twangy country song though. Like
right. it's country pop.
Yeah.
Country alternative.
A little folksy. It's good. I like it.
But you're not going to find a lot of rock songs about, having an admirable father. Nope. Anyway, that is like my particular one because it taps into this, one of my deeper motivations. Like I wasn't a very clean person. We were both messy people that lived like very messy college students for several years into our marriage. And when we had kids, I realized...
You figured out how to clean.
Well, I didn't want my son our firstborn son. We have 2 kids now. But I didn't want my son to grow up in my mess. Like I wanted him to have, space to run around safely and not run into things, and also to be able to develop the habit of being able to organize his own space as well. And so that motivated me to start cleaning, where I never really felt the personal motivation to do that. And like I said, I lean on that with work too sometimes. So.
And I learned how to like contain my mess. So I used to just like expand to any area that I had access to, but now I keep it contained to like my space, and it doesn't go over the rest of the house.
Yep. And so that's really helpful. And so the third example I gave, the best example, are these live streams, just because deciding when to do my video, doing takes, like I did the 10-minute video, and it was hours of me trying to do it in a single take over and over and over again. Like I go nuts with takes, and then you have to edit, which takes so much discipline for me to like, all right, I am going to listen to myself and watch myself. I literally actually have played games while listening to myself on high speed, switching only over to like edit when I hear mistakes. I've done that on videos, right? Just to like distract myself.
Make it bearable.
From like trying to do that. And so and then not only that, you have to like publish it and click publish. So there's so many points at which I have to like barriers at which I have to like wrestle with my not liking of producing my own video. I like talking to people, and I try and lean into that. But the live stream removes all of those difficult barriers, right? I don't have to edit. I can't do multiple takes. I turn us live or whatever in the morning, but I have the expectation of, some of you guys, some people watch this occasionally live, mostly in retrospect or afterwards, but, and Meg, I'm leaning on another habit, right? We had a morning check-in, so I just, in some ways, this live stream is a much scaled up version of what we were doing before. But like, you know, it's built up from something, like I anchored in a habit we already had. And so that just made this so much easier. And it's showing in the numbers too that, you know, I mean, I wasn't doing any videos, I think, in October. But, you know, I was getting like, you know, 2 to 4 subscribers a month, and it's been 10 this month. So double the number of subscribers. We'll hit triple digits. Double the number of subscribers per month. Anyway, that, you know, all of this goes back to like, it's making it easy that allows me to do it enough to start seeing results and getting new people on the platform. And there's kind of a snowball effect to doing it this much, right? Where, because more people are watching these videos, YouTube in general is recommending more of my videos, so I see, you know, the occasional people commenting on my other videos. So there's a huge snowball effect to making something easier so that you can do it in volume, and then the results that come with that volume. So
yep.
Those are the 3 levers and just examples of how I use those in my own life. I think that's it. Please do join us at 8 a.m. Central. Comment on the videos. I will comment back, and I would love to get to a place where we even have questions and comments in the chat that I can address so that we can build a community of entrepreneurs who are all struggling through these similar issues like creating sales funnels, hacking their motivation and discipline, etc. So, please do like, subscribe, and it would be great if you shared this as well so we could help as many people as possible. Of course, until tomorrow, make big changes one small habit at a time.
Bye.